أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على إمام القبلتين ونبي الحرمين وأفضل الثقلين وجد الحسن والحسين الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين والذين ذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على صاحب الدعوة النبوية والصولة الحيدرية والإسمة الفاطمية والحلم الحسنية والشجاعة الحسينية والعبادة السجادية والمآثر الباقرية والآثار الجعفرية والعلوم الكاذمية والحجج الرذوية والجود الثقفية والنقاوة النكبية والهيبة العسكرية والغيبة الإلهية. اللهم عجل فرجه وسهل مخرجه. أما بعد فقد قال الله في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نزل عليك الكتاب بالحق مصدقا لما بين يديه وأنزل التوراة والإنجيل صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the love of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. To give our condolences to Fatimatu Zahra salamullahi alayha upon these nights as we approach the day of Ashura, a louder salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the hastening of the reappearance of the master of our time, a louder salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The series has been in front of you, Imam al-Hussein, the inheritor of Nabi Isa salamullahi alayhima. Imam al-Sadiq in Ziyaratul Waritha says, Assalamu alayka ya Waritha Isa ruhullah. That salam be upon you, O Hussein, the inheritor of Jesus, the Spirit of Allah. This concept or inheritance or the concept of wiratha, one aspect of it is referred to within the Holy Quran. And that aspect, it says, ثُمَّ أَوْرَثْنَا الْكِتَابَ الَّذِينَ اسْتَفَيْنَا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا. Those individuals who are chosen servants, we have made them to inherit the book. And one of the key functions that we see from this line is that if Ahlul Bayt are seen as the successors of the Prophet, and they are seen as the inheritors of the Prophet, then the key function that they serve is to safeguard the book of Allah and to be those who preserve the book of Allah. And in this regard, when we look at the Quran, there are two titles of the Holy Quran which are given. One title of the Quran was mentioned in this ayat which I recited at the beginning of this lecture. This verse which is in question is Surah Al Imran, chapter 3, verse number 3. And it says, O Prophet, نَزَّلَ عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ بِالْحَقِّ. This book which we have sent down unto you, we have sent it down unto you with the truth. And what is this book? مُصَدِّقٌ لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ. This book will confirm that which is in front of you all. In other words, one key function of the Quran is to confirm the original and the true uncorrupted message of the Torah and the Injil. And if Imam al-Hussein is seen as the Warith, the inheritor of the Quran, then you find that at one level of the legacy of Imam al-Hussein and his connection with Nabi Isa is to preserve the legacy and the message of that true Injil and gospel which was revealed onto Nabi Isa. You see, the word Injil in the Quran has been mentioned 12 times. And the word Injil in the Arabic language is an Arabization. In other words, the word in Greek was evangel, which means the good news. And that word evangel was taken into the Arabic language with the word Injil. And you find that the Quran, when it mentions the Injil of Jesus, there are two interesting things that happen. The first interesting thing is this, is that when you look in the New Testament today, is there one Injil or are there multiple Anajil? That is there one gospel or are there multiple gospels? When we look today into the New Testament, we find that there are 4 different gospels. There is Injil in the plural. There is the Injil of Mark, and there is the Injil of Matthew, and there is the Injil of Luke, and you find there is the Injil of John. But you find this is in the canonical New Testament, meaning that in what is called the Bible today, and I'll explain to you what Bible actually is. In the Bible today, there are 4 gospels, but when you look in the history of Christianity, there were much more than 4 gospels. There was a gospel of Mary Magdalene, and there was a gospel of Barnabas, and there was a gospel of other individuals. You know, you would be surprised, there was even a gospel of Judas. That individual in Christianity who was said to have betrayed Jesus, there was an Injil and a gospel named after him. So the first interesting point when we look at the Quran is that these different gospels in the plural, these Anajil, were already well known in the time of Rasulullah. But the Quran uses the word Injil in the singular. So this is the first point to note. The second thing that the Quran says about the Injil, it says, وَأَنزَلَ التَّوْرَاةَ وَالْإِنجِيلَ within this ayat. Allah, He revealed the Torah and He revealed the Injil. The Torah to Musa, the Injil to Isa. Do the Christians believe today that the Gospels are from God? They don't believe that they are from God in the sense that they were revealed to Jesus. The Christians, they do not believe that there was a kitab which was revealed to Jesus. They say these different Anajil and Gospels are the story about the life of Jesus according to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John at the very minimum level. So the first 2 interesting things that the Quran mentions in regards to the Injil is that it was one book, it was revealed unto Nabi Isa alayhi salam. Now the second thing that we notice when we go to the Quran is that the word Torah is mentioned in the Quran 18 times. The word Torah in the Hebrew language, it means law. And the Quran shows us a number of different things about the Torah. The first point that the Quran makes about the Torah and the Injil as well is that even today in the Injil and the Torah, there is some level of truth within there. The Quran says, number 1 in chapter 3, verse 3, that مُصَدِّقٌ لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ. That one rule of the Quran is that the Quran will confirm what is true within the Torah, it will confirm what is true within the Injil. That despite everything these books have gone to, that is one element. But then the Quran mentions a second ayat. A second ayat, it says, وَكَيْفَ يُحَكِّمُونَكَ. That, O Prophet, how are these individuals going to make you the judge? وَإِنَّهُمُ التَّوْرَاتِ فِيهَا حُكْمُ اللَّهِ. They have the Torah, within it are the rulings of Allah. In other words, if they are neglecting this Torah, which has the rulings of Allah, which they consider sacred, Rasulullah, who are you that they are going to make you the judge amongst them? So what these 2 ayat show, that from the perspective of the Quran, number 1, that in the Torah and in the Injil, there is some level of truth. But now the second thing which the Quran mentions is that there was alteration and there was corruption to the Injil and the Torah. It says, Afa tatma'una, that, O Prophet, do you all want them an yu'minu lakum? Do you want them to believe in you? وَقَدْ كَانَ فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ يَسْمَعُونَ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ وَيُحَرِّفُونَهُ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا أَقَلُوهُ. That do you want them to believe in you, despite the fact that amongst them is a group that would listen to the kalam and the speech of Allah, and they would alter the speech of Allah after they've understood it. So the second point that the Quran is making, number one, that even in the Torah and in the Injil today, one element of truth is there. Then the second point it's making is that, number two, they altered it. But then the Quran goes one step further. And when it goes one step further, it says, فَوَيْلٌ لِلَّذِينَ يَكْتُبُونَ الْكِتَابَ بِأَيْدِيهِمْ وَيَقُولُونَ هَذَا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. That woe be upon those who write the book with their hands, and after writing the book with their hands, they say that this is from Allah. So after the element that there is one element of truth, and after the element of omission and alteration, the third thing the Quran is mentioning about these previous scriptures is that there is stuff within the scriptures that human beings would write with their own hands and they would ascribe it towards Allah. And that's why the second title of the Quran, which is very interesting, is that the Quran is called Muhaymin. That it is seen as the guardian of the other books. That if these other books, the book of the Injil which was revealed to Jesus, and the Torah, if they have gone through alterations and omissions and corruptions and additions, then we cannot rely upon them. The only thing amongst them that we can rely upon is that which the Quran has confirmed within it. And indeed tonight, the subject of analysis is to see where within the Bible of today and the Quran there are similarities, and where within the Bible and the Quran there are differences. Because if we're going to understand this topic of Imam al-Hussein being the Warith, the inheritor of Nabi Isa, you find one function of the sacrifice of Imam al-Hussein is that he preserved the true legacy of the Quran on the day of Ashura. You know, oftentimes from our manabir, they say that one side was reciting the Quran, the other side was reciting the Quran. But this is a historical inaccuracy. Because Imam al-Hussein, on the night before Ashura, that night tomorrow which will come and will commemorate, you find Imam al-Hussein, he asked for that night. And when he asked for that night, one side was merrymaking, one side was enjoying this world. And then the other side, as the Maqatil say, they were reciting the Quran in such unison, it's as if it was the sound of the buzzing of the bees. That when you look at the ashab of Imam al-Hussein, these were individuals who would uphold the Quran. You know, about Habib it is written, كَانَ يَخْتَمُ الْقُرْآنِ فِي لَيْلَةٍ وَاحِدَةٍ. That Habib ibn Madayr was an individual, in one night he would recite the Quran to completion. Burayr ibn al-Khudayr was considered Sayyid al-Qurra. An individual like Lady Fidda was considered somebody who would speak in the Quran. So you find in this regard, Imam al-Hussein was the preserver of the legacy of Nabi Isa in the sense that he preserved the Quran. Now when it comes to this discussion, the first point of difference between the Quran and what is called the Bible today is in regards to the definition of what these books are. You see, the word Quran comes from the word qira'ah. And the word qira'ah means to recite. You know, when we say that the Quran is a book, number one, the Quran is a book which was memorized. That the Quran was revealed onto the Prophet in different manners, through Jibreel to the heart of Rasulullah, and then after that Rasulullah would recite it. It was a book of tilawat, and in that sense the Muslims would memorize it, and only secondarily it was written down. But when you look at the Bible, you find the Bible is not a book in the sense of one book. The Quran from the beginning to end has unison. The Quran has a similar theme, a similar language, a similar style. But you know what the word Bible is? The word Bible comes from the Greek word ta biblia. And what this means is books. You know, many people, when they think of the word Bible today, they think it's just one book. But in reality, the Bible is multiple books which were gathered. Number one, you have the Old Testament. The Old Testament in the Arabic language is called Al-Ahd al-Qadim, and even in Urdu, sometimes they say Ahd-e-Qadim. The Old Testament is 39 books. And in those 39 books, the first 5 books of the Old Testament are called the Torah. The Old Testament, the Ahd-e-Qadim, all of it isn't the Torah. The first 5 books are what is called the Torah. The book of Genesis, the book of Deuteronomy, the book of Exodus, the book of Leviticus, and the book of Numbers. These 5 books, they come together and they call it the Torah. And if you ask a Jewish individual, what are these books? They will say it is the Tanakh. Because the word Old Testament is insulting to a Jew. Because they don't believe that it is old. They believe that this is the ruling of Allah right now. So they would call it the Tanakh. The second thing which we see in the Bible today is the New Testament. The New Testament has 21 books. Out of those 21 books, you find that 11 of them were written by Paul. And of them, the most important are the first 4 books, the Gospel of Mark, the Gospel of Matthew, the Gospel of Luke, the Gospel of John. You see, Matthew was seen as a disciple of Jesus. And Mark was seen as a student of Peter, a disciple of Jesus. Luke was seen as the son of a physician, and John was seen as an apostle. So the point that I'm trying to make over here is that even the Christians of today, if you go and ask them who wrote these different books, they'll give different answers. When we have the Quran, we believe that the Quran is not even the kalam of Rasulullah, but it is the kalam of Allah, which was directly revealed unto the Prophet. And that is why the Quran is so honest that it even has the word qul within it. In other words, one of the proofs for the authenticity of the Quran is that when Allah said to the Prophet, say that he is one, Rasulullah said, say he is one. You know, if I said to our brother over here, say Allah is one, he's going to reply with Allah is one. He's not going to reply with say Allah is one. But you find the Rasulullah, he includes this say. And this say is not included in any other book of a religion besides the Quran. This style is maksus with the Quran. So you find in that manner, the Christian of today, if you ask them, they'll mention there were different writers. And in that sense, the first fundamental difference between the Quran and the Bible is the definition. The Quran is seen as one book, that over a period of 23 years, it was revealed unto Rasulullah, whereas the Bible is a collection of multiple books. Now the second difference between the Quran and the Bible is in its preservation. If I asked you today that what is the dalil and the evidence for the authenticity of the Quran, what would you say to me? It's a point of reflection. One of the strongest proofs of the authenticity of the Quran is that so many Muslims in every generation by the thousands and by the thousands memorized it, that there is a connective chain from now all the way until the time of Rasulullah. You know, in the Battle of Yamama alone, it's stated that in the Battle of Yamama, 700 huffaz and memorizers of the Quran died on one day. If in one battle, 700 memorizers of the Quran passed away, it goes to show that how many individuals there were in the Muslim Ummah who memorized the Quran. But at the second level, I'll say to them, the second proof for the authenticity of the Quran is that when you go across the Muslim world today, no matter what sect you go to, Zaydis, Ibadis, Shia, Sunni, everybody has the same Quran. Yes, there are minor differences in qira'at. For example, if you go to Morocco and you listen to Surah Al-Fatiha, they'll say Maliki Yawmiddin. It's a difference in recitation, a minor difference in recitation, which has been accepted by the Muslim Ummah. But you find that in terms of the Quran, its content, it's the same. Is this the case in Christianity? No, it's not the case in Christianity. The Catholics have different books in the Bible than the Protestants. The Mormons have an additional book in the Bible, which is called the Book of Mormon. That when you look at the Bible, in terms of its preservation, there is no ijma and agreement by the Christians on what is within the Bible. But when it comes to the Quran, the Muslim Ummah is in consensus about what is the Quran. Now, the second thing that I mentioned about the authenticity of the Quran is that from now until Rasulullah, there is a link from those Muslims who recite the Quran all the way until the time of Rasulullah. But when it comes to the Bible, there is no link. And there is no evidence of this link. You know what the earliest manuscript of the Bible is? The earliest qalami nuskha of the Bible is from the year 1008 of the Old Testament. And this is called the Masoretic text. On one side, the Christians say that the Torah was written by Musa. How much years is between Musa and the year 1008? At the very conservative estimate, 3,000 years. The earliest manuscript of the Old Testament goes to the year 1008. It is called the Masoretic text. Now you may ask about the New Testament. The earliest manuscript of the New Testament is called the Codex Sinaiticus. And this goes to the year 375, meaning almost 400 years after the crucifixion and the ascension of Jesus, according to them, crucifixion. So you find that this is a massive gap in between Nabi Isa, whom they say these gospels are about his life, and in between them. But when it comes to us and our history, we had a system of isnad and chains. That if Rasulullah would do something, the Muslims would record. There will be people there. And that is something which is unique in our history. People, they ask the question about Karbala, that how do we know what happened on the day of Ashura? On one level, we know what happened on the day of Ashura because there were eyewitnesses to the events. And it wasn't just the case that the eyewitnesses were on the side of Yazid. Because many people, they say that if everyone in the army of Imam al-Hussein died, then who was it that recorded the event? Was it just the enemies? We say no. Number one, the women and the children of Ahlul Bayt were there. They recorded the event. We say number two, there were even people in the army of Imam al-Hussein who fought with Imam al-Hussein, but they didn't die on the day of Ashura. A famous name is Al-Hasan ibn al-Hasan al-Mutanna, the son of Imam al-Hasan. He was wounded in the battle. He was taken towards Kufa, and you find that he survives. He's a key witness to this event. Another individual is an individual by the name of Muwakka ibn Tumama al-Asadi. You know Muwakka ibn Tumama al-Asadi? He fights in the army of Imam al-Hussein. And he fights until his arms are cut off and he falls unconscious on the ground. When the army of Umar bin Sa'ad was counting the heads and they were getting the bodies, they noticed this individual is alive. And because he was severely wounded, they said, Oman, we will not kill you, but you are going to be exiled to Oman. You find this individual is an individual who was not an enemy that recorded the event of Ashura. A third individual on the side of Imam al-Hussein was an individual by the name of Uqba or Aqaba ibn Saman. You can pronounce it both ways. You know who Uqba ibn Saman was? Uqba ibn Sam'an was the slave of Rabab, the wife of Imam al-Hussein. And there are many important narrations which come from Uqba ibn Sam'an. For example, that narration that Imam al-Hussein, he takes a nap and he wakes up and he says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And Ali Akbar says, Oh father, that why do you say this? The Imam says, Oh Akbar, I saw in my dream a horse rider was coming. It represents death. And Ali Akbar says, Alasna alal haq, that, oh father, are we not on the truth? This comes from Uqba ibn Saman. Uqba ibn Saman was there. He was not killed on the day of Ashura. Another example of such an individual is Ad-Dahhak al-Mashriqi. Ad-Dahhak al-Mashriqi was an interesting individual. Ad-Dahhak al-Mashriqi, he says, "O Hussein, I will come with you to Karbala, but as soon as I know that you will be killed, absolve me of my allegiance and let me go." The Imam says, "Very well. I will let you go, but go far enough to where you cannot hear our cries. Because anyone who hears our cries and does not help us, the azab and the punishment of Allah will be against those individuals." So you find there were many individuals that show that when it comes to our history, whether it is the Quran, whether it is Karbala, there is a link from then until now. But at the second level, when it comes to Karbala, one point before I come back to the topic of discussion, is that people ask about the details. For example, there are certain narrations that say there were 1,000 wounds on the body of Imam al-Hussein. The question is that who was there to count? But you find these are riwayat from Imam al-Baqir. And in this regard, we are relying on the ilm of imamat in these cases. So you find over there, that is a transmission of an event. And in the same way, what the Christians do not have for the Bible, we have for our history, whether it is the Quran, whether it is the events in our history, such as the day of Ashura. So you find this is the second key point when it comes to the Quran and the Bible. Now the third key point of difference between the Quran and the Bible is in terms of how these books present and in terms of how they describe themselves. When you look at the Bible is very linear in history. That it'll mention from the beginning, this happened, then this happened, then this happened. It'll mention genealogies, it'll mention history, it'll mention this is the hasab, the nasab of that man. The Quran is circular. And you may ask that why is the Quran circular? At one level, the Quran is speaking about Tawheed. Then after that, it gives the example of a prophet. And then after that, it goes to Allah. And then after that, it goes somewhere else. The reason it does that is because a human being is not linear. Insan in his journey to Allah goes through fluctuations. There are times you are closer to Allah. There are times you are farther than Allah, from Allah. And in that sense, you find the Quran understands the rhythm of a human being. That if it was just one topic from beginning to end, a human being becomes born. But these change-ups within the Quran, all with the same momentum and theme, all of them go to demonstrate that this is a divine book. And in that sense, there is one thing the Quran does when it presents itself that the Bible, it doesn't do. And you know what that is? The Quran presents itself as a mu'jiza and a miracle. The Torah doesn't say it's a miracle. And the Injil doesn't say it's a miracle. But the Quran says that it is a mu'jiza and a miracle. And in what way is it a mu'jiza and a miracle? It says that وَلَئِنِ اجْتَمَعَتِ الْإِنسُ وَالْجِنُّ عَلَىٰ أَن يَأْتُوا بِمِثْلِ هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ لَا يَأْتُونَ بِمِثْلِهِ. That if the jinn and the human being gather to bring the likes of this Quran, they will never bring the likes of this Quran. Then later it says this challenge is too much. Bring 10 chapters like this Quran. Bring 1 chapter like this Quran. And you know, there were individuals in history who tried. I'll never forget Musaylama al-Kadhab. He heard that Surah Al-Kawthar was revealed. And they said, Surah Al-Kawthar is a short chapter. Why don't you come up with a chapter so you can rival the Prophet Muhammad? Because Musaylama, you say you're a Nabi, then you should have something which Muhammad has. So you know what Musaylama al-Kadhab says? He says, وَالْفِيلِ وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَعَ الْفِيلِ لَهُ ذَنْبٌ وَبِيلٌ وَلَهُ خُرْطُومٌ طَوِيلٌ. He says, by the elephant. And you will never understand what the elephant is. The elephant has a short tail and it has a long trunk. They said, oh Musaylama, what is this nonsense? This was your attempt at copying the Quran? But you find in that regard, the word mu'jiza comes from the word ajz. Ajz, you know, even in Urdu, you say somebody who is ajiz. Somebody who is ajiz is somebody who is incapable. And in this regard, in front of the Quran, You find that other miracles, other individuals who would bring false claims, they were ajiz. They were rendered incapable. You know, the Quran is a miracle in many aspects. One aspect in which the Quran is a mu'jiza is that it gave predictions before something occurred. You know, one miracle in this regard in the Quran is the chapter, Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab, that may Abu Lahab and the two hands of Abu Lahab perish. Now you may say to me that how is this a mu'jiza and a prediction? I say all Abu Lahab had to do to prove that Rasulullah was wrong and that the Quran is not a mu'jiza is to say La ilaha illallah. Even if he said it outwardly, even if he didn't believe in it, all he had to do was become a Muslim, and then the Quran is in a big problem. Because the Quran said that Abu Lahab and the two hands of Abu Lahab will perish. But the Quran over here gave a mu'jiza in the form of a prediction, in the form of a prophecy. It was pointing to the fact that this individual, Abu Lahab, will never become a Muslim. Another example is وَغُلِبَتِ الرُّومِ, that when the Romans were conquered by the Persians, the kuffar began to say that our brothers, the Persians, defeated your brothers, the Christians, in the same way we will defeat you. But the Quran says afterwards, وَهُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ غَلَبِهِمْ سَيَغْلِبُونَ, the Christians will be victorious. And you find this is a mu'jiza in the form of a prophecy. Now another way the Quran is a mu'jiza is because of the wording and the kalam of the Arabic language. You know, I'll give you an example. If I told you to say that your Lord glorify him, but say it in a way where if somebody reads it forwards and backwards, it's the same, would you be able to do it? You will not be able to do it. That, you know, you will not be able to write it in a way that forwards, backwards, it will be the same thing. But the Quran says, Rabbuka fakabbir, that your Lord glorify him. What is the first letter? Ra, ba, kaf. Rabbuka. 3 letters. In the middle is the fa. Now, when you go to kabbir, the same letters are flipped around. Kaf, ba, ra. If you read this backwards and forwards, it says Rabbuka fakabbir. And this is a mu'jiza from Allah. And no other book, the Bible doesn't do this, the Injil doesn't do this, the Torah doesn't do this. So at the second level, the Quran is a miracle in terms of its linguistics. The third level, the Quran is a miracle, is that it gave truths that were discovered later. You know, nobody was opening up a stomach and looking at the embryo. But you find the Quran describes this process in great length. But the fourth way in which the Quran was a miracle is that it says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. That do you not ponder over this Quran? If this Quran was from someone other than Allah, there would be great contradictions and ikhtilaf within it. You know, the Quran was revealed over 23 years. And the fact that this book, which was revealed over 23 years, has no contradictions is something to think about. You know, if I was writing a book and I was writing it over a period of 1 month, you know, a human being changes over a month. Your style of writing changes. Your thoughts, they change. But this Quran in a period of 23 years, the style doesn't change, the themes don't conflict each other. And over here, Allah has given a barometer. That barometer for an Asmani kitab, that barometer for a book revealed by Allah, is that there must be no ikhtilaf and contradictions within that book. And in this regard, when you look at the Torah and the Injil, the Bible of today, there are many contradictions. For example, when you go into the Old Testament, Genesis book 1 and Genesis book 2, in Genesis book 1 it says that Allah created the vegetation and the earth and all of these different things, and then He created Adam on the 6th day. But hold up, when you go to book number 2 of Genesis, It states over there that Adam was created before the trees and the vegetation. On one side, you're saying everything is created, and then Adam is created. But then you're saying over here that Adam is created and before the vegetation is created. But at the same time, you were saying this is the book of Allah. Allah can't inspire a contradiction. You know, oftentimes if you tell this to Christians, they'll reply by saying originally they had no contradictions. But then the scribes made an error. I say if it's a book from Allah, in its inception it should be pure, in its preservation and hifazat it should be pure. In both levels it should be pure. So you find this is the Old Testament. But when you come to the New Testament, if you look in the Gospel of Matthew and the book of Acts, there's a massive contradiction. And you know what that massive contradiction is? On one side, it talks about Judas who betrayed Nabi Isa. And it says in one of them that Judas hung himself. That the Jews, they gave him the money. He threw the money into the temple and he hangs himself. In another, in the book of Acts, it says Judas purchases some land and he falls onto the ground and his head splits open. You say to the Christian, if this is a divine book, what is it? Did Judas kill himself or did Judas fall on the ground and his head split open? But when you look at the Quran, you find that no such contradictions, they exist in the Quran. So you find this is a third key difference between the Bible and the Quran. The fourth key difference between the Bible and the Quran is in the concept of Tawheed. When you look at the Tawheed of the Bible, you find that at times Allah is in a wrestling match with Nabi Yaqub. That God comes upon this ground and Nabi Yaqub wrestles God and he beats God, and God says, now your name is Israel. In another place, it's stated that Adam is in Jannat. And Adam hears the footsteps of God. And he hides behind a tree. And God is saying, Adam, where are you? You find this is very different from the Quran. The Quran says, Laysa kamithlihi shay, that there is nothing like Allah. And there is nothing like Allah in any regard, in any capacity. This is another difference. A fourth difference between the Quran and the Bible is in regards to their view on the Anbiya alayhimus salam. In the Bible, the Anbiya are seen as regular people. And more than that, they are seen as worse than regular people. The Nabi Lut alayhi salam in the Bible, he sleeps with his daughters. And Nabi Nuh alayhi salam is drunk within the vineyard. And you find other Anbiya are making mistake after mistake. But you find this reality isn't within the Quran. But the final difference between the Quran and the Bible in this analysis is that nowhere is it stated in the Bible that there will be a hafiz and a waris of that kitab. That nowhere is it stated that after Musa there will be a group which protects this kitab. But when it comes to the Quran, you find the Quran refers to that group. It says, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ رِجْسَ أَهْلِ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. It says, إِذْ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ, he says, إِنِّي تَارِكٌ فِيكُمُ الثَّقَلَيْنِ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَإِتْرَةِ أَهْلِ بَيْتِي. You see, the Quran over here is showing that while the Bible, while the Injil are different, when it comes to the Quran, there is a walking, talking Quran. There is an exemplar of the Quran. And that's why I'll never forget the line of Amir al-Mu'mineen on the day of Siffin, that to get out of the battle, the side of Muawiyah, they raised the Qurans upon a spear to confuse the army of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And Ali ibn Abi Talib, he says to his people that you are worried about these Quran upon a spear. I, Ali ibn Abi Talib, am Quranun Natiq. I am the walking Quran. And in that regards, when you look at the Ahlul Bayt, those sifat which are within the Quran are within the wujud of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. When the Quran says, Dalikul Kitab la rayba fi, that there is no doubt within that book, Ali ibn Abi Talib says, Kullo kushafa liyal ghita ma'azdattu yaqina, that if the veils are removed, I am at certainty. In the same way, there is no doubt within I, Ali ibn Abi Talib. When the Quran says, وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ, that within this Quran we have revealed that which is a shifa and a rahmah. You find Ahlul Bayt, their dhikr is a shifa and a rahmah. And in that regard, we find the remembrance of Imam al-Hussein and those who held on to Imam al-Hussein. And upon this night, we remember Aba Fadl Abbas alayhi salam. You know, Abbas, as we know, is special from amongst all of the shuhada. And the moment you go to Karbala, you recognize that. That on one side, you see the mausoleum of Aba Fadl Abbas. And on the other side, you see the shrine of Imam al-Hussein. You know, the distance between the haram of Abbas and the haram of Imam al-Hussein is the same distance as the distance between Safa and Marwa approximately. You know, Safa and Marwa was that maqam where a mother ran in between those two mountains because her son Ismail was thirsty. I say if Hajra ran 7 times in between Safa and Marwa because Ismail was thirsty, how many times must the ruh of Fatimatul Zahra go in between the shrines of Abbas and Imam al-Hussein? You know, Abbas is that shaheed that when you go to the shrine of Aba Fadl Abbas, you say, Ya kashif al-karb an wajh al-Hussein, ikshif al-karb anni wa an hadih al-ummah. That, oh, the one who removed calamity from the face of Imam al-Hussein, remove difficulties from me and from this ummah. You know, one thing that we notice about Aba Fadl Abbas is the loyalty of Aba Fadl Abbas. That on the day of Siffin, as Aba Fadl Abbas was fighting, one individual, he says, Oh Abbas, you are fighting, but Hassan and Hussein are not besides you. You know what Aba Fadl Abbas said? Aba Fadl Abbas said that those are the sons of Rasulullah. I am the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Those are the eyes and I am the hands. And it is the job of the hands to protect the eyes. You see, this spirit of loyalty in Aba Fadl Abbas was given to him by his mother Ummul Baneen. That when Amir al-Mu'mineen, he goes to Aqil and he says, Oh Aqil, I want a son who will be a warrior. Aqil says that from the tribe of Kilab, there is a lady by the name of Fatima. Amir al-Mu'mineen marries Ummul Baneen. And as he would call her Fatima, she would notice that there would be tears in the eyes of Ali ibn Abi Talib. So she comes and she says, Oh master, don't call me Fatima anymore. Because every time you say Fatima, there is a lot of pain that I see upon your face. From now on, call me Ummul Baneen. You know, Amir al-Mu'mineen would make dua for a son like Abbas. And after 10 years, according to some records, Amir al-Abbas was born after the marriage to Ummul Baneen. It's stated in one narration that Amir al-Mu'mineen, whenever his children were born, he would kiss their forehead. When Imam al-Hassan, Imam al-Hussein, Muhammad al-Hanafiya were born, the Imam kissed their forehead. But when Aba Fadl Abbas was born, he doesn't kiss the forehead of Abbas, but he kisses the right and the left arm of Aba Fadl Abbas. Ummul Baneen says, Ya Ali, why did you do this? Did you do this because I am of a lower status as a mother? Amir al-Mu'mineen says, Oh Ummul Baneen, it's not that, Oh Ummul Baneen. But Oh Ummul Baneen, I am kissing those arms that will be cut for my Hussein. And Amir al-Mu'mineen to his final moments would give this wasiyah to Abbas, that when he was passing away, Sayyida Zainab's hand was put in the hand of Imam al-Hassan. And Kulthum's hand was put in the hand of Imam al-Hassan. And Muhammad Muhammad al-Hanafiya's hand was put in the hand of Imam al-Hasan. But when Abbas comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen, the Imam takes the hand of Abbas and he places the hand of Abbas in the hand of Imam al-Hussein. And it's this Abbas that Imam al-Hussein would keep Abbas for himself. You know, when it came to Ali Akbar, the Imam said, Taqaddam ya waladi, Ali Akbar, go. But Abbas was a support for Imam al-Hussein, that when Abbas was shaheed, the Imam said, Al-an inkasara dahri. That at the body of Qasim, the back of Hussein wasn't broken like the back of Abbas. When it comes to Aba Fadl Abbas, he says, now my back has become broken, you know, on the day of Ashura. The day would pass, Aba Fadl Abbas would wait. Ali Akbar, his nephew, is martyred, Abbas would wait. The body of Qasim is broken into pieces, Abbas would wait. On and Muhammad or Shaheed, Abbas would wait. Habib and Muslim are gone, Abbas would wait. But at one point, Abbas, he comes to Imam al-Hussein and he says, Oh Mawla, when will you give me ijaza? The Imam says, Ya Abbas, anta sahibu liwa'i, Ya Abbas. Abbas, tum is lashkar ke alamdar ho. Abbas, you are the flag bearer of this army. At that moment, فَنَظَرَ إِلَى يَمِينِ وَالشَّمَالِ. Abbas looks to the right, he looks to the left, and he says, Oh Mawla, which army am I the flag bearer of? Who is left within this army? The Imam says, Oh Abbas, stay behind. Aba Fadl Abbas, he stays until the daughter of Imam al-Hussein, she comes. And she says to her chacha that, can you bring water? There's thirst, oh chacha Abbas. Abbas, he says, oh my master, if you won't let me fight, then let me get water for these children. Imam al-Hussein says, oh Abbas, you have permission. Aba Fadl Abbas, he takes an arrow, he takes a water bag, he takes the alam, he goes towards the Furat. You know, at that moment it's stated that Abbas, he picks up the water of the Furat, and Abbas, he says, Ya nafsu min ba'd al-Husayn huni wa ba'dahu la kunti aw takuni wa anta tashrabina barid al-ma'ini wal Husayn warid al-manuni. That, oh soul, you want to drink this water while Hussein is about to drink from the water of death. He throws that water away. He places the water in the bag and he begins to return. But as he's returning, a point it comes when they cut the right arm of Aba Fadl Abbas. Abbas says, Wallah in qata'tum yamini inni uhami abadan an dini wa an imamin sadiq al-yaqini wa najl al-nabi al-tahir al-amini. He says, by Allah, if you cut my arm, I will not stop doing the difa of the grandson of Rasulullah. Abbas, he takes the alamin towards his left arm. They cut the left arm of Abbas. Abbas, he takes that water bag by the teeth. But then one moment it comes, you find an arrow goes into that bag. The water falls on the ground. After that, the ummid of Abbas doesn't look to the tent, he looks towards the maqtal. But then that moment it comes, an arrow goes into the right eye of Abbas. You know, there was a khatib in Karbala. He recited the Masaib that an arrow went into the eye of Abbas. Over there was an alim by the name of Yahya Yatribi. He said, oh man, don't recite this Masaib. You don't know if this Masaib is authentic. Yahya Yatribi says that night I saw Abbas within my dream. And Abbas said to me, why did you stop my zakir? He said, it's because I didn't know if an arrow went into your eyes. Abbas, he says, on the day of Ashura, the arrow went into my eye. But whenever something goes into your eyes, the first thing that you do is you use your hands. At that moment, I didn't have any hands. So how did I take that arrow out? I put that arrow in between my knees. My knees would hold the arrow. I would pull the arrow out. Imam al-Hussein comes to the body of Abbas. Hamid ibn Muslim says that as Hussein was walking, I would see that Hussein would pick up something out of the ground, and then he would pick up something else. When I looked closer, what was it? It was the two arms of Aba Fadl Abbas. Hussein, he would come to the body of Abbas. Ala la'natullah ala al-qawm al-zalimin.